In one African village, a baby girl was born. The village rejoiced at the news of her birth, excited for the first glimpse of the newest member of their community. From the eldest to the youngest, they gathered, anticipation buzzing in the air. But as they peered into the cradle, their smiles faltered, eyes widened, and whispers swept through the crowd. Right there in the baby's soft hair, everyone saw two tiny horns. The happy noises of the village turned into whispers and shocked faces. The cute little girl, who was just looking around with big, curious eyes, didn't know what was going on. But those small horns she had, without her knowing, started a big problem that would soon turn her whole world upside down. Her mother called her Isoke, which meant beautiful gift in the language. It was a name that carried the mother's hopes for her child, a silent prayer that the world would see the beauty and uniqueness she saw in her daughter, despite the horns she bore. When the people saw the horns, they started to say it must be a curse. They pointed at the baby girl and shook their heads. No good can come from this, they whispered to each other. The kids in the village laughed and stayed away from her, making up mean nicknames. Her mother heard all of this and it made her very sad and scared. She wanted to hold her baby and tell her everything was okay, but the mean words kept ringing in her ears. Feeling alone and worried about what everyone said, she decided she couldn't keep the baby. She waited for night when everything was dark and quiet. She picked up Isoka and walked out of the hut. No one saw them. The village was asleep. She slipped into the forest where it was just them and the sounds of the night. She found a place in the forest where the moon shone through the trees. Here she gently put Isoke down on the soft ground. With tears and a kiss, the mother said goodbye, hoping the forest would be a kinder place for her little girl. Then she went back to the village alone, leaving Isoke to start a new adventure under the stars. When Isoke was first left in the forest, the dark made her scared. She missed the warmth of her mother's arms. The night was full of strange noises, the hoot of an owl, rustling leaves, and the distant call of wild animals. She cried, her little voice lost among the trees. But as the days went on, Isoke got used to the forest. She learned that the owls were friendly and the rustling leaves were just the wind playing. In time, she wasn't scared anymore. Isoke grew braver and sometimes wandered back to the edge of the village. Curious eyes peeked out from behind doors, and the children would point and laugh. There goes Isoke with her horns, they would shout. Their words stung like thorns, but Isoke tried not to show her hurt. In the village, there was one old lady named Mama Nia who watched Isoke with eyes full of kind sadness. Mama Nia saw the girl's gentle heart and knew that Isoke needed a friend, so she made a quiet promise to help the lonely girl with the horns. Every morning, Mama Nia would wake up early, wrap up some food in cloth, and walk to the place where the trees met the village. She would leave the bundle on a large flat rock where Isoke could find it. Then she would hide and wait to watch Isoke come to take the food. Mama Nia's heart would leap every time Isoke smiled, finding the meal. Though she never said it out loud, Isoke was thankful for Mama Nia, the only one in the village who cared. Her kindness was like a tiny light that kept the darkness of the mocking words away. As Isoke grew older, she began to walk into the village more often. Each time she had hope in her heart, but the villagers only met her with cruelty. The children, taught by their parents' fearful glances and harsh words, would run away screaming as if she was a monster from their bedtime stories. Curse! Curse! They'd chant, throwing stones her way, making her flee back to the safety of the forest. The adults were no kinder. They'd cross their paths to avoid her, spitting on the ground to ward off her bad luck. No one would buy or sell to her, saying they didn't want anything from the cursed girl with horns. The only touch she received from them was the push of an elbow or the accidental brush of a broom, sending her stumbling, an unspoken agreement that she was unwelcome. They'd yell after her, "Stay in the forest, Isoke." That's where curses belong. Every insult, every rejection was a painful reminder that they saw her horns and not the person underneath, all except for Mamma Nia. This old lady was different. She didn't say much, but her actions spoke volumes. She'd continued to leave food for Isoke. Mama Nia couldn't stop the mocking or change the villagers' hearts, but with every piece of bread or fruit she left, she offered Isoke a whisper of hope, a reminder that not every heart was full of scorn. One day, something bad happened in the village. A terrible sickness came, carried on the breeze, invisible and silent. The first one to get sick was a young boy. He woke up with green spots all over his skin, and he felt so weak he couldn't even get out of bed. By the next day, the spots had spread to his whole family. It didn't stop there. Like a fire in dry grass, the sickness moved from one hut to another. Soon many people had the green spots. They felt so sick they couldn't eat or drink. They lay in their beds, too weak to move, and the laughter and chatter of the village turned into coughs and cries for help. The healers tried their best with herbs and prayers, but nothing seemed to work. More and more people got sick. Some even stopped breathing. As the plague with the green spots spread through the village, things got much worse. First, it was one or two who stopped breathing, too weak to fight the sickness. Then, as the days passed, more and more huts held someone who had taken their last breath. The air in the village grew heavy with sorrow and fear. Every home had someone coughing and whimpering in their sleep. The ground outside the village where they buried their dead was disturbed more and more often as they had to say goodbye to their loved ones. The laughing children were nowhere to be found. All the running and playing had stopped. The village, once a place of warm sun and white smiles, became quiet and still, except for the sound of weeping and the village elders' desperate prayers for the sickness to end. But the green spots kept showing, and the number of those lying still in their beds grew day by day. While the green plague brought sadness and fear to the village, Mama Nia, the kind old lady who cared for Isoke, remained untouched. It was a mystery. While those around her fell ill, she walked among them, a quiet force unfazed by the sickness. The villagers noticed that Mama Nia didn't have even one green spot on her skin. She didn't cough or look weak. She was as strong as ever. They watched her, puzzled and a bit suspicious. How could it be that the sickness hadn't touched her? What's her secret? They whispered to each other. But Mama Nia just kept to her routine, caring for the sick as best she could, and every morning leaving food on the rock for Isoke. Despite the sickness in the village, Isoke still came to the edge of the forest. She saw that the place was quiet and full of sadness. No kids came to mock her, they were too sick or too scared. She walked closer and saw empty streets, and in the quiet she heard the coughs and cries from the huts. Isoke felt a tug at her heart for the suffering people, even after they had been unkind. She spotted Mama Nia coming out of her hut, looking tired but still without any green spots. Isoke took a deep breath and stepped into the village, ready to face the people who had always turned her away. She walked past the huts, looking at the sick faces that now looked at her not with mockery but with despair and silent pleading for help. As Isoka moved through the village, she saw a man slumped by his door, spotted with the dreaded green marks of sickness. He was so weak he could hardly lift his head. Isoka knelt beside him and, without thinking, reached out her hand. When she touched the man, something amazing happened. The green spots faded, his skin cleared, and color returned to his cheeks. He looked up at Isoka in wonder and amazement. He stood up, feeling strength flow back into his body. With a quiet resolve, Isoke went from hut to hut, touching the sick. As she did, their spots vanished and their strength returned. News of her healing hand spread like sunrise across the land, and soon even those who had hidden from her were reaching out. The people were astonished. The girl they had called cursed, the one they had ridiculed and cast out, was their savior. With every person she healed, the shame grew within the villagers. They couldn't look into her eyes, the same eyes they had avoided for so long. Soon the entire village was free of the plague. People stood outside their huts, watching in awe as Isoko walked back towards the forest, their former scorn replaced by grateful, humble silence. They realized the horns they had feared were a gift, a blessing that saved their lives. The people knew they needed to thank her and make things right. They gathered together to discuss what they could do to show their gratitude and ask for her forgiveness. The village leaders spoke first, thanking her in front of everyone. They said they were sorry for not seeing the goodness in her because of her horns. They promised from that day on she would always have a place in the village and no one would ever mock her again. The villagers came up with a plan to show their thankfulness. They built her a new house right at the edge of the village where the forest began. It was a sign that she was part of them but could still be close to the wild she loved. They filled the house with blankets, pots, and everything she would need to feel at home. Children she had healed brought her gifts of nuts and berries, and the women cooked her meals. Everyone who passed by her new home would greet her with a smile, no longer with fear or ridicule. They told her every day how sorry they were and how grateful they were for her help. Their actions spoke louder than their words. Isoke felt the change in their hearts. With time, she forgave them, and together they learned that kindness and understanding are the true ways to heal and unite a community. In the end, Isoke, the girl with horns, became Isoke, the healer of the village. The same horns that had made her an outcast now brought her praise. But more than that, they taught the village a lesson they would never forget. The villagers learned to look beyond what is seen. They realized that the very thing they had deemed a curse had saved them. In their ignorance, they had created a ghost from an angel. In their understanding, they found that angel to be their savior. They learned that what makes you different can make you special. They remembered to be kind because everyone has something good inside them. Sometimes what makes someone different is what makes them special. Before you judge or turn away, remember Isoke. Give people a chance because in every corner of our vast world, there's an Isoke with horns waiting not to be feared, but to be understood and perhaps to reveal hidden blessings that could heal hearts and bind us ever closer. Thank you for listening to my story. If these words have touched your spirit or sparked your imagination, then our journey together has been worthwhile. Remember the lessons nestled within these tales. Carry them with you and share them as gifts with those you meet. Until we gather again to share another story, keep the magic of storytelling alive in your heart. Goodbye for now, and may your days be filled with beautiful gifts, just like Isoke.